Dorothea from Through an Orthodox Christian Lens. Good evening. It's March 3rd. Already March 3rd, 2025. And today and in this video I'm going to be talking to you about two things. About what Daniel Davis says here regarding the Ukraine-Russia issue, and how he is saying that everything that Zelensky and the West is doing is playing in the hands of Russia. And he's going to explain why he says that here in a minute. And then I will be showing you a piece from Kim Iverson's show when she spoke to Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kowalski or something like that. She has a very long last name. I can't really pronounce it too well, but she's the retired lieutenant colonel, and I'll show that next. So first, we're going to start off with what Daniel says regarding the Ukraine-Russia issue that I thought was interesting, so I'm sharing it with you.
This is the current battle map situation here, okay? This is the line of contact. These are the administrative orders of the regions, which I've mentioned to you before. But here is Odessa in the south. Here is Transnistria, way, way deep into terrain currently held by Ukraine. And of course, Kiev is right here. Lots of yellow in between here. You had Zelensky himself tell you last month that there were, he claimed, 150,000 Russian troops up in this area here near north of their border, and some in the Belarus area that could come to the south. There's also been, I've shown you Russian reports that there are 200,000 Russian troops just somewhere in this vicinity here, which could come any place, whether the Pokrovsk or down in the southern part in the Kherson area, it's unknown. But this is where there's a substantial Russian forces in addition to the 700,000 that are on there now. If President Trump made his deal with Putin, the Ukraine side would lose these gray areas right here, and Russia would keep all those that are currently red. That's how it would work. Everything else, Ukraine would get to keep. Everything, to include Odessa, access to the Black Sea, all those things. No more people would die. That was the deal that's being offered by Putin, which Trump was prepared to agree to, because Trump realized they don't have the leverage to compel anything less than these. But there is something more that could be had. Now, I just showed you there. This is the map as it exists right now. And I showed you that the Russian sides are saying today, hey, this is a great deal, because you're basically taking that. One of the other articles I saw in the Russian media said, hey, you're basically taking off the table. Anybody they can't even blame us or accuse us of anything anymore, because now then Putin had peace on the table and you took it off. Putin offered peace in 2022. You wouldn't take it. He offered it again in June 2014. 2024 rather. You wouldn't take that either. Now they're saying this last one here with Trump was the last one. And because you guys did it, now then no one can blame us, so they think. No one can blame us if we keep going. Now, that's the Russian side. You can say, oh, that's just bluster. No one really believes that. Well, let me show you one more thing here, because this is Austrian Colonel Marcus Reisner, who has produced, in my view, one of the best, from the start of this war, the most analytical and unbiased view of just militarily what's happening here. This is what he's saying is the risk if the Western side does not accept the Putin deal.
A lot of people think, especially in the West, that this zone is pretty much going along the front line, maybe also going to the north, which is pretty much representing the border in between Russia and Ukraine. The Russian perspective is a completely different one. The Russians want to have everything east of Kiev. Why? Because already now it is possible, theoretically and practically, by using long-range weapons like the Storm Shadow, to hit a target by using that rocket from the area east of Kiev in direction of Moscow. So any demilitarized zone from the Russian side has to be pretty much everything east of the Dnieper to avoid any threat to Moscow by using from the Ukrainian or even European side missiles like the Storm Shadow. And if you now look in the Russian social media, then you pretty much can already see that idea. So you can see that pretty much Russia has occupied in the future maybe everything east of the Dnieper. And they also want to have the terrain to the west of the Dnieper and the south, because they want to deny any access of the Ukrainians to the Black Sea. They want to control Odessa, and they want to have a land bridge to Transnistria. And that will make Ukraine a landlocked country with no access to their important resources in the west and in the south of the country.
Wow, that is a stunning view here. That's what's possible. Now, that's Austria. So at least somebody in Austria or Europe is paying attention. We've had Colonel Jacques Beau on here from Sweden, or Switzerland rather, and he says the same thing. He's actually got a whole book coming out on this risk here, apparently just within a few months from now. So some do recognize it, but none of the leaders do. Right now, these leaders are playing directly into Vladimir Putin's hand. That makes it easier for him to take that. He has the military capacity. Whether that takes another 6 months, whether the Ukrainian military collapses and he can just roll vehicles straight up to Odessa and just occupy it, or whether he has to fight on, and whether the Ukrainian military will continue, despite everything else, still fight on and have to be extracted city by city and field by field. Russia will do that, even if it took another year of fighting. They will do that. And the reason why on that video you see, it's a security issue for Russia. They have to get to where they think even whatever missiles that the Ukraine side will have can't reach Moscow. So they want to push it back so that the range of those missiles is less than their capital city. And if they have the military wherewithal, why would they stop short of ensuring their own national security on their border? They've already invested, in their view, a tremendous cost, over 100,000 dead, 250,000 wounded, and whatever the actual number is, some suggest it's higher than that. It doesn't matter what it is. It's huge, and the Russians recognize that it's huge. And to them, the price that they have paid would make it unthinkable to stop short of that line. They were apparently willing, Putin was willing to minimize that and to go against what a great many in Russia want, which is that yellow area you saw. They've been willing to, Putin was willing to work with Trump to actually stop short of that. If Trump is not there on the playing field to do that anymore because Zelensky took it off and the European Union has embraced him and said, yes, we'll keep fighting, they are handing a golden opportunity to Putin, because now even in his population, even in his country, he can make the case, we have tried peace every way you can imagine, from before the war started to back to 2015 with Minsk, December 2021, April 2022, June 2024, now then February 2025. They have tried everything in the world, and the European Union rejects it and will not have it. So now then Russia and Putin with his people say the only alternative left for us is to pay whatever price is necessary to conquer the rest of it. And that is probably what they will do if we don't change course now. And unfortunately, based on what we see today, and there's another European Union meeting today and another one on March the 6th, where they're going to talk about giving more and more money. I think up to $6 billion is what they're shooting for. All they're doing is laying the foundation for the destruction of Ukraine, the deaths of hundreds of thousands of more men, and a tremendous victory for Russia, gift wrapped and handed to them. Thanks, Europe. Well done. That's what you're gaining here. So on the optics of it today, Europe looks great. A lot of people are embarrassed about the United States because they say, oh, see, look what the Europeans are doing. And, they're warmly welcoming this hero and all this stuff. That'll play today. It won't play at the end. It won't play at the end, and it won't keep any Ukrainians alive. That, unfortunately, is the harsh truth. We'll continue to watch this for you and see how it plays out. But, folks, that's just the ugly truth of where we are and where it's going. But you can count on Daniel Davis.
Okay. So basically what he's saying is the European Union, Europe is, backing Zelensky that is going to cause more land lost, more Ukrainians killed. Because we know Ukraine feels like it's existential threat that they feel like, that they have to defend their country because of the invasion. Well, history shows that Russia has to do that because of the encroachment on their borders from NATO countries, and the countries that joined NATO over the years, or in the past 20 years or more. And so, actually more than 20 years. And so what he's getting at is it's only going to play into Putin's hands. It's only going to be more land, more of a buffer from Ukrainian portions of the Ukrainian land, and more deaths, because they aren't going for this peace that we should be going for. I will add that I heard I think it was yesterday, I didn't really hear it, I saw it on X, that Trump met with his aides to discuss the possibility, to discuss ending aid of any sort to Ukraine. And I hope that this happens, because if he drops all of that, if we drop all our aid, well, and that includes, humanitarian weapons, money, whatever, is going to not be there. I think Zelensky is going to be forced to have to come to the table and relent for a peace agreement. We can only hope. And so I shared with you on that I thought was important, what he shared. My next thing I'm going to share with you has to do with the Israel issue. And this was on Kim's show a couple days back. This is what I told you, Lieutenant Colonel Karen, and she has this long last name, starts with K. And she's going to bring up something very interesting, because Kim was, as well a lot of us are concerned about what is going to happen with Israel, with Gaza, with Iran. Is Netanyahu going to do something drastic, which he tends to do? We have to see, Colonel McGregor was worried about that. Larry Johnson was asked this today on one of the shows that I watch, and he thinks it's possible that Trump will allow Netanyahu to go ahead with whatever. Now, Scott Ritter thinks that's not going to happen. Scott Ritter did pose a really good question. If Trump is so, he's been talking about peace, he wants peace, and he wants to be the peace candidate, and he's already done that, he's working with that with Ukraine. Why wouldn't he do that with the Middle East and even Israel? No matter what, as they say, Zionists that are in his administration and AIPAC and everything else. Well, that's a good question. If he wants, security, national security, and peace, maybe he wouldn't automatically get involved in that or whatever, but we'll see. Here, Lieutenant Colonel Karen, she's going to bring up something that's I had never heard of, nobody had ever talked about, regarding a certain issue, a nominee of Trump's that he's nominated for his administration, a position in there, in the DOD. I'm going to let you listen to what she says here.
I think if you want to understand how Israel perceives their situation, you have to look at how AIPAC is operating, and of course, you look at how Israel's leaders are operating. And I don't think, my opinion, this is just my opinion. Maybe it's worthless. I don't know, but my opinion is that Israel's a little bit worried about Trump, partly because he's Trump, and you can't predict everything that he's going to do. And the reason I say this is because AIPAC is completely, insanely going after the appointment of Eldridge Colby. He is an upcoming appointed guy working in DOD, and the thing that he's going to be working on is the Middle East policy. Eldridge Colby is the son of a former CIA director, Colby, who died in a canoe, very strangely, and after he retired. Have you heard of him?
I haven't. I'm going to look this up.
Okay. Anyway, Eldridge is his grandson. I said son. I'm wrong about that. He is his grandson, and he has served in previous governments before. He's a very normal-looking guy, but he's highly respected, and he's not pro-Israel. He is pro-peace, like Trump is pro-peace, but he's way more. He's an administrator. He's a strategist. He's a smart guy, and they're going to put him in a place. The position he's up for to be that the Congress has to approve is putting him in a place where he will shape Middle East policy. And AIPAC is having conniption fits about this, and they are working Congress and the Senate hard, particularly the Senate. And guys who supported, some of the neocons like Tom Cotton and some of these other people who are totally reliable for Israel and did eventually come on board for Tulsi Gabbard and some of these other appointments that were a little, and RFK Jr., right? I mean, RFK Jr., he's a great Zionist. It's not his area of concern, but he...
Really?
Break the system.
Oh, okay.
And they're afraid the Congress, it doesn't want that. So, but these guys the senators came on board for these candidates, but they are not coming on board for Eldridge Colby. And their phone lines are being worked hard by AIPAC. AIPAC does not want to see him there. Now, why? If they trust Trump so much, why do they care what the third, he's a second tier under Hegseth, I think, second or third. He's not a top level guy. He's not going to be somebody who gives press conferences or anything like that. He's going to be working kind of nuts and bolts on Middle East policy, and AIPAC despises him. They are extremely worried about him, and I don't know why. They shouldn't be, but they are, okay? And that's why I think that Trump has a strategy that really will be putting America first, and if nothing else, not that we can't be friends with Israel, certainly we can be, but not equal friends.
Right.
Kind of like the Zelensky treatment. And this goes back to what you're saying. I'd like to see him treat Netanyahu and give him that the Zelensky treatment. Certainly Netanyahu deserves it, but it may be coming. It may be coming, and so watch how happy or unhappy AIPAC is, and they are not as happy. I'll just say this right straight up. AIPAC is not as happy as they should be. They are not as grateful for Trump as they should be. Why is that? Because I think they understand. He potentially is, if any president can do something about Israel, it will be Trump.
Let's hope.
Fascinating. That is a fascinating piece there. I was just happened to listen to her, I think yesterday, and wow. That was quite an interesting piece. Yes, why are they freaking out over this particular guy? She says he's not like pro-Israel. So I decided to look this guy up to find out what's going on with him. What's he about? I'm going to share that with you. It's here he is. Realists cheer on Eldridge Colby named top DoD official for policy. Okay, so this was back on December 23rd, 2024. Eldridge Colby, who worked guiding Pentagon policy in first Trump administration and is an advocate of building up military assets and deterrence as a way to avoid future U.S. wars, particularly with China, has just been named the incoming Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. It is an important role and one that realists and many restrainers are all too happy to go to Colby, who is the most representative of the realist approach to foreign policy that Trump has nominated or selected since winning the White House in November. Colby has openly said he opposed the Iraq War and every U.S. conflict overseas intervention since. Wow, that is pretty amazing. That is pretty big deal. That's pretty impressive. He's opposed all of them and has been a vocal critic of U.S. proxy war against Russia in Ukraine. He has supported Ukraine's campaign to defend itself, but says the war is not a first priority interest of the United States and warns that continuing Washington aid and weapons at the current pace won't make a difference there while sapping U.S. resources for its own defenses. I agree. His pick has realists, particularly on the right, cheering, comparing him to an older tradition of U.S. foreign policy practitioners. Rich Colby is arguably the leading conservative realist in U.S. defense and foreign policy today, notes Reed Smith, Vice President of Foreign Policy at Stand Together, tells RS. He hails from an intellectual tradition defined by statesmen like James Baker and Brent Scowcroft, who prioritized power and pragmatism over gauzy moralizing or rigid ideology. At the same time, his approach signals a generational shift toward a foreign policy grounded in reason, mindful of constraints, and informed by the lessons of past mistakes. What Colby believes is the chief security interest of the U.S. is China, and that is where some restrainers peel off. Colby has said Washington must preserve its weapons and shift its energy and focus for accelerated defense industrial production on China. While he wants to avoid war, he believes Chinese are actively preparing for conflict. I don't particularly believe that. China doesn't really come off to me as a warring nation. Now, Larry Johnson said, China hasn't been in a war and, has not been aggressive to anybody, in past 20, 30, 40 years. So I don't totally agree with that, but I'm go on with this. But yes, it'll be the most powerful nation other than us, and then Russia. But the only prudent way, my view is to prevent them from dominating Asia without a war. But the only prudent way is to be prepared to fight to show Beijing that there is nothing to gain by initiating conflict. In that vein, he sees Taiwan as the flashpoint. As he wrote in the Washington Journal in September, for about the past decade, I have been arguing in every available format that we should prepare ourselves to defend Taiwan. But my argument has always been that Taiwan isn't itself of existential importance to America. Yes. Rather, our core interest is in denying China regional hegemony over Asia. Taiwan is very important for that goal, but not essential. Again, Taiwan belongs to China, but we'll go on. The key is to make Taiwan defensible at a reasonable level of cost and risk for Americans. This is a theme I developed at great length in my 2021 book. The sharpness and insistence of my arguments have been motivated by this precise fact. To make Taiwan defensible, America must focus on preparing for Taiwan's defense, and Taiwan must do more. Some restrainers, even realists, believe that China's desire to dominate Asia is in itself a realist position for China, and one that does not threaten the U.S., and therefore would not require the power projection that in fact might provoke the very war that Colby claims to want to avoid. Interestingly, Colby's only serious detractors have been pro-Israel types who say he is too dovish. This is maybe where Lieutenant Colonel Karen was speaking of. The pro-Israel people are not for him. Interesting. Too dovish on Iran, citing a column in 2012 taking a realist point of view on the debate over whether the U.S. should attack the Islamic Republic or not. He says, but perhaps the most important argument against attacking Iran has received less attention. That is, that none of the attack proponents can give a sensible answer to the question General David Petraeus posed at the beginning of the Iraq War. How does this end? Matthew Kronig and other advocates for war note correctly that a strike against Iran could do substantial damage to Iran's program, but they fail to explain how the United States will prevent Iran from simply restarting its program, this time in deadly earnest. These critics, who cite Colby's 2021 co-written essay on reducing the U.S. military footprint in the Middle East as another data point in his dovishness, fail to note that he has firmly stated his support of Israel's security, protecting Americans from the threat of transnational terrorism and preventing the domination of the oil-rich Gulf states by potentially hostile power as the main U.S. interests in the region. In the same stated essay, he says, these U.S. interests can be served through a far more scoped and modest approach than the United States has pursued over the last generation, most notably through the Freedom Agenda, but also through its efforts to broadly stabilize the Middle East. The United States should therefore reduce its military engagement and presence in the region, shifting burdens as much as possible to other, primarily 76 regional actors. This last goal can best be pursued by supporting and bolstering the capabilities of Israel and regional states like the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt, whose interests on key issues broadly align with the United States. This is key here, what he says there. He's interested in those group of Arab countries, that their issues broadly align with the United States. But he also is talking about reducing its military engagement and presence in the region, which would be awesome. So, of course, I agree with this. Colby, during the Trump administration, also advised Trump to be cautious in sliding into war with Iran, which, despite the administration's assassination of IRGC commander Qasem Soleimani, which in early 2020 did just that, And I think Trump was coerced and deceived into doing that. Again, Soleimani was an important figure in Iran. He led his armies to fight against ISIS and Al-Qaeda. The day he was bombed, he was going to meet with the Iraqi leader about peace talks. It's just a shame that we kill these people that were actually doing good things to help against real terrorists, ISIS and Al-Qaeda. In any case, this was seen as a win for realist restrainers in the Trump orbit like Tucker Carlson and Colby, but who at the time wrote in the Wall Street Journal, as the U.S. protects its interests in the Middle East, it must not allow its military focus to be wrested away from Asia. So again, his real sights are laser pointed eastward. Colby is a major proponent of rebuilding the American defense industrial base. Trump's other pick announced last night, billionaire Steven Feinberg, as Deputy Secretary of Defense in charge of budgets, runs a major private equity firm overseeing a vast web of defense companies. So the two will complement each other, no doubt, in that regard, but that the closeness of profit-making industrialists to strategy and policy is already giving some restrainers heartburn. But Colby, and I want to add this seems to be what Trump was doing with the Middle East, trying to, his big words about Gaza and rebuilding it, he had encouraged by those actions and those words, those bombastic words, encouraged the Arab League and the Arab nations to move and to take care of the Middle East issue themselves. And so that kind of goes along with what this Eldridge Colby was saying, apparently. So, interesting. McColby has had years of experience in government and in developing the intellectual firmament behind a peace through strength approach, and many have breathed a sigh of relief that his position on China, which is slightly more hawkish than those who want a much less militarized posture, is not as ideologically driven and keen for a Cold War redux as others in the Republican orbit around Trump today. That's very interesting. Again, I'm not crazy about this defense companies and all that junk, but if it's going to be not getting involved in wars, I'm all for it. So this man does sound interesting. I guess they're trying to get, AIPAC's trying to get the Congress not to confirm this man. Well, my view on that is what we've always done. You have to go with what Trump wants his picks to get in, and people voted for that. Now, if that doesn't work, I hope he does take advantage of a recess appointment. And again, Lieutenant Colonel Karen said that this man is not one of the top positions to have to worry about. And I've seen through past presidential admins, the presidents put in recess. All those other people that came in that weren't top appointments were just recessed appointed in. We will see. Anyway, I wanted to share those two things with you. I thought they were pretty important information. It's pretty important. So thanks for watching. Please follow my channel, like my videos if you like them, share my channel, share my videos. Thanks so much for all your support. Until next time.